Thanks to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. Would Gon Freecss and his hunter friends be able to hunt down a JoJo villain? As pro hunters, this could be the perfect challenge for them. I wasn't sure which JoJo villain to use here, because I think anyone from parts 2 to 6 could work as a hunt. Plus, Kira would be the second bomber they had to find. But I decided to go with DIO, specifically from part 3. He is the most iconic villain after all, and this would be the largest scale hunt. This video isn't just going to be focused on scaling, by the way. The hunt itself is the focus, but the fights are still important. When comparing JoJo characters with Hunter x Hunter, there is a big discrepancy with speed, so for the sake of this video, speed is going to be equalized, base power is going to be equalized, but enhancements like Gon's will still buff him, and stands are going to be visible and tangible for Gon and his friends. I guess we could just say that Nen and stands work similarly in this video. Base strength and speed won't be a factor here unless you have an ability that specifically enhances that. Everyone's abilities will be the same though. We're mainly focused on skill and how those abilities interact with each other. Gon and crew will start in Japan like the Crusaders did, with the same photo of Dio, and that's all they're working with. The scenario is the Speedwagon Foundation pays these hunters handsomely to track down Dio and kill him. I guess Jotaro and everyone else are on vacation or something. Bad timing for Dio. They're in a safe location where Dio's stand users won't find them, and they're only focused on Gon's crew. So for all intents and purposes, these are the Stardust Crusaders here. Gon's crew will consist of Killua, Kurapika, and Leorio. They will all have their full abilities, and Gon will be his Chimera and Arc self. With the ground rules out of the way, let's begin. First, they would have to try and track down Dio, figuring out where exactly in the world he is. And for the sake of this video, we'll just assume they have knowledge of the real world, because obviously Hunter x Hunter's world has a very different map. We'll just pretend that they're familiar with every real world aspect here. The Crusaders had Joseph's help with tracing the bug in the photo, and Joseph doxing Dio with the fly is really funny to me. But that aside, I see a few ways of this working. For one, assuming their knowledge applies to real world animals here, they might manually be able to do the same things that the Crusaders did here. Analyzing the photo, finding the fly, and determining the location from that. But there's also an easier way too. Kurapika's dowsing chain can locate Dio on a map for them. So right off the bat, they're in a good spot. They have two ways of actually finding him here, so either way, they'll know they need to go to Cairo. Unfortunately, Dio couldn't prevent being tracked this way. But you could protect yourself from being tracked with today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Whether you're on public Wi-Fi or just sick of your data being sold off to the highest bidder, Surfshark will help keep you safe when browsing online. Whether it's a person, conglomerate, or even a stand user trying to track you, Surfshark helps keep you safe by encrypting your data and even constantly changing your device's IP address, giving you enhanced protection and privacy. But it's not just protection you're getting. Having a VPN with changing locations comes with a few other features too. For example, have you ever been on a streaming service and saw a show wasn't available in your country? That's no problem with Surfshark. Using it lets you change your location and access its region-locked content. Your data is safe too. They have a no activity logs policy, and their servers are 100% RAM only, automatically deleting all data when the server's turned off. If you want to keep yourself protected or simply open yourself up to a new world of content, Surfshark's got you covered. They also have a great offer right now where you can get 4 extra months of Surfshark for free when you sign up. Just go to surfshark.com/saladbar or use the promo code SALADBAR at checkout to get your offer. And with the 30-day money-back guarantee, there's no risk to try it out. Thanks again to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. Their journey starts by taking a plane out of Japan. Now, of course, they're going to know this route won't be so straightforward because it's probably going to be perilous. It's not going to be as simple as just taking a plane there. But they could still chance it, just like the Crusaders did. They knew that they'd probably encounter a stand user on the plane, and of course they did, and the plane ended up crashing. As for the group of hunters here, if they do need to change plans, they will. It's not going to be too tough. The planned route was flying right to Egypt. Now, it's unclear if this flight is direct to Cairo because we see a map with what looks like multiple stops, but in Chapter 11 it said they would be taking a plane straight to Egypt. And given the times and locations on the map, it seemed like these aren't connections, unless they're just really short connections, which is pretty awesome for them. This is a direct flight, and you might be wondering why am I going into so much detail about the flight itself? Well, you'll see in a bit. Killua, Gon, and Kurapika should be able to stop the stand user of Tower of Grey. Their abilities, combined with their cooperation, should make it pretty straightforward to stop a stand like that. More importantly, finding the stand user shouldn't be too hard. Because first off, they have Kurapika's help. His dowsing chain ability would locate the user quickly enough to prevent any more issues. Not to mention, Killua wouldn't have a hard time catching the stand as it moves around. His sharp reflexes should be really helpful here. This is also when the group realizes that Dio has actually sent assassins out. They probably would have assumed it in the first place, but now they know that the stand users are on the hunters just like the hunters are on Dio. So this raises an interesting question. What's going to happen to all the other stand users? Because if their flight doesn't crash, well, that's going to change everything here. But all these people are set up in different places along the way to Egypt, so what would happen with them? Would they still go after the group? I don't really think so. Some might still encounter them and naturally be attracted to the group. Maybe some even try to attack the plane while it's in flight. But since it's direct and they won't even be flying over the places they originally visited, they may arrive in Cairo safely and quickly. Right off the bat, Dark Blue Moon is completely skipped, and same for Strength. No boat ride means this is all ignored. The other stand users would scramble to track them down, but considering where they're placed, it'll probably be pretty tough. Following that, we have Devo and Rubber Soul. They're both assassins and might just try to hunt them down otherwise. Especially since Rubber Soul was offered a ton of money by DIO, he might chase down the group another way, motivated by that alone. Of course, Gon's group would have a very huge head start. He'd have to find a flight to Cairo really quickly. The two are in Singapore together and have the same goal, but I don't know if they'd necessarily work with each other. Rubber Soul has the money as a motivator, while Devo is just insane and also hired for this. Because remember, not all of DIO's agents were purely loyal to him, and more specifically, not all of them had flesh buds, so they're not blindly loyal to DIO and they could do pretty much whatever they want to here. They might even try and go after each other rather than the team, especially with one of these guys being completely unhinged. Anyways, let's say the two of them fight and just one of them makes it to Egypt after Gon's crew. Just like the actual story, we'll say Devo dies and Rubber Soul lives. I think he should be able to win that fight too. Nana's likely out of the picture, and Whole Horse is also a mercenary that would be motivated by money. He's not even loyal to DIO by any means. I mean, you saw what he tried to do. He's after DIO's treasure. If he hears the hunters are making it through just fine, well, he can kind of just sit where he is and bank on them killing DIO and then go after his treasure for himself. Because realistically, how the hell is he going to make it to Cairo before them? Also, he might just decide not to actively pursue them, enjoying his time in India and trying to clean up after the fact. And it's not because he doesn't want to face the hunters themselves, but rather the fact that there's probably other mercenaries thinking the same exact thing. He's going to play the long game and not deal with that. It's probably best for him. ZZ and Enya probably get skipped, but J Gale might have a shot. Since his stand is based on reflections and can move like light, he might actually be able to reach the plane from the surface. However, this depends on if the plane flies directly above his location or not. Based on the map of the flight's path, it seems just south enough of Kolkata to actually be out of his view. So they might even just avoid him in general, but still worth mentioning this. Steely Dan is avoided too, and Arabia Fats probably is as well. But when they arrive in Cairo, this is when we have issues. There are a few stand users in Egypt prior to Cairo itself. So while everyone else is too spread out in Asia to actually help, some people might be able to get to Cairo in time. Managed Boy might have a little bit of trouble due to being a baby and not being able to easily move about, but Cameo and Midler should be able to reach them though, especially with the latter being able to use their stand from so far away. And of course, there's the 9 glory gods in Cairo, plus Rubber Soul's probably on his way, but he might be a few hours behind. So let's start with Cameo, and say that he's the second person they encounter. As their second fight overall, there's still a lot they don't know about DIO's stand users. Cameo would try to trick them into making wishes with a judgment, and he should be able to create clay constructs without the wishes too, so this would be the first combat they face. I would guess he'd use the fakes of the hunters to try and trick them, but as seasoned hunters, I'm sure they'd be able to figure out who's who, especially with how long they've known each other. Especially Gon and Kurapika, I feel like they'd be more than keen enough to distinguish the clones, no matter how perfect. Thankfully, this is really all he could do for combat. Their second fight's really simple. Midler would probably catch up to them not too long after. High Priestess is a pretty tough stand to battle due to its ability, but I feel like it shouldn't be a major issue for the group. They're going to start facing challenges in Cairo because the stand users here are more specialized with better abilities. They're not unstoppable by any means, but slowly things will start to gear up, and there's some interesting abilities that they'll have to work around. For one, Endul. Killua's electricity might be especially effective against his stand as long as he has enough stored up, because it's water, it's going to conduct that electricity. Leorio's ability would be pretty useful too, being able to attack from a distance like that. By the way, this doesn't really matter for a lot of fights, but if he were to actually encounter anyone with flesh bloods, he'd probably have the skill and precision to remove it, especially because he developed his ability with that in mind. But it's also the perfect counter to get because I'd imagine his ability would be able to locate the stand and disrupt it while it's moving, and Killua's electricity would be conducted through it if it attacks, so their two abilities combined with Killua's sharp reflexes in general would allow them to react and electrocute him just in time. Now, Kurapika is one of the most valuable members on the crew, in case that's not clear yet. Besides his intellect, his variety of abilities is a huge help here. Plus, we haven't even seen him use his steel chain yet, where he could copy abilities. Since Engel's probably going to try and game end himself, it's a good opportunity for Kurapika to at least steal his ability. I don't see Oingo and Boingo being big issues either. Boingo's stand lets him at least see the future, but we've also seen how it's not specific or very reliable. Oingo, on the other hand, can try to trick the group by transforming himself, but I feel the hunters would have the necessary skills to judge who's who, especially because he can't change his clothes and act like them normally. Combined with the fact that Kurapika is a lie detector both with and without his Nen abilities, this group's not really going to be an issue. Anubis would possess random people around them, and stopping a sword user shouldn't be too tough for them. Kurapika's chain jail would help to bind them, and a ranged attack from Gon or Leorio would be a good way to fight the Master Swordsman. After being bound by chain jail, even if this doesn't deactivate the stand's abilities like it would Nen, the sword user is immobilized regardless. Kurapika could probably force them to drop that sword, which would then reveal that the sword is actually possessing the user, and anyone who picks it up will get possessed by it. So now with them freeing whoever this is from their mind control, they'll learn of the sword's danger, and Leorio can attack from a distance, trying to break the sword. With his Nen ability not using actual fists to touch anything, he could destroy the sword without touching it or drawing it. They'd have to find some way to dispose of it though, so That might be a bit tougher, but at least this battle won't be a problem. Now, Mariah's kind of an interesting case. She might actually pose an issue at first, because Killua, he might try and recharge his ability with the outlet because, like, come on, this is like the perfect trap for him. While they're wary of stands and obviously a smart group, remember, they haven't really encountered too much right now. They wouldn't have any way to suspect this, and especially with Killua needing to recharge himself every so often, it should work, but I also feel like Killua can counter this pretty well once he's affected by it. He'd have a metallic object fly towards him, but he has the reflexes and strength to catch them and even move while covered in them. Plus, these would conduct his electricity too, so it's not like he can't attack. No one else would get immediately affected by the stand, and Killua would probably just have to handle this himself. Mariah might also try and lead him towards the power lines like she did with Joseph, and that's like the worst possible thing she could do here. Her stand would be a nuisance for him at first, but Killua should be able to find a way to deal with her, and when he gets close to the power lines, if it even gets that far, he's just supercharged, so she's just helping him out if anything. He might be able to defeat her before then, but still. Regardless of what happens, I think they're chill, and at worst it's going to be a little annoying for Killua. Rubber Soul would eventually arrive in Cairo. I'd say a few hours behind the group, assuming he could find a flight that soon. He'd probably try and work alone still, but I could also see Anubis beckoning him and possessing him because he seems powerful. In a way, even with a broken sword, this could create a strong team up. But they know how to deal with the sword, and even though he came close to his goal, Rubber Soul is stopped here. Alessi's actually one of the really big issues, particularly for Gon and Killua, since even brief contact with him would turn them into babies, if not just fetuses. Kurapika and Leorio aren't really that old either, but they at least aren't too vulnerable. Alessi's stand could be really fatal for Gon and Killua. It's really dependent on the situation and how the group is split up. Alessi himself isn't the issue, but the circumstances of when they encounter him and who's there. Polnareff was 24 in part 3, and even with very brief contact, we saw how fast he de-aged. Leorio is the oldest of the group at 21, so this stand poses a threat to any of them. Not to mention, when you're affected by the stand, you also lose any abilities you gained by de-aging. So everyone here would lose their Nen abilities, and at least Killua would have some of his assassin abilities if he de-ages, but still. This is the most cumbersome challenge so far. Either way, if they make it out of this encounter, they would probably stay grouped up for the rest of the journey if they haven't been already. I have a feeling Leorio would be good at handling the game against Darby, the first one. I don't know how good he is with gambling, but he's definitely one to spot a swindler. And who knows, maybe he can pull some scam while gambling too. It's also probably apparent that this guy's one of Dio's men, so they'd know he's up to something anyways. When Darby mentioned they're betting their souls, they just don't have to agree to it. They'll probably take that seriously and realize it's not worth the trouble, so they could either simply not bother with his gambling tricks or just fight him up front without getting into his ruse. Either way, he's probably hopeless. Pet Shop Stand is actually pretty potent, but with the group together I think they're fine. This is something Gon and Killua could easily handle, especially with the range attacks. Plus, if Gon somehow gets caught in ice, he has enough brute strength to just break free. Here's where things really ramp up. Dio's Mansion. These are going to be the toughest battles, obviously. As for the second Darby brother, I'm actually not sure how they get around him. We know for a fact Killua is a gamer to some extent, but he seems to like RPG-type games, at least based on his knowledge during Greed Island. I'm not sure how good he is at multiplayer games like the ones here, but at least he gets to choose the game, so there's a good chance he actually has one that he could play well. It might pose an issue because he would probably play first, and without knowing the abilities of Terrence's stand, that could leave him vulnerable. If Killua wins his first match though, it's as simple as that. And there's a very real chance of that happening, it just all depends on the game he chooses. They could also just kill him right off the bat, before they even get into some contest with him. Or maybe they'd have to sacrifice one of themselves first, like somebody else plays a game against him first just to see what his ability is, and then Killua comes in and saves the day by actually winning the game. Either way, because it's very circumstantial, let's say they move on. Kaniji and Nokusaku aren't really going to be an issue. But then you have Vanilla Ice, who's obviously a really major threat. Killua can create illusions to bait him, and as far as detecting him, they'd have to think outside the box like Polnareff. With the enhanced senses of Gon and Killua, they might have a few ways to at least sense the void moving, which is already really hard to detect in general, but if they could at least judge the general direction he's moving in, he's avoidable. Not to mention, Killua's whirlwind could allow him to react in time, even if he gets too close to the void. And someone as fast as him would be an ideal candidate to fight here, especially since Vanilla Ice needs to peek out to maneuver himself with Cream. This gives an opportunity to attack. And even if they do land a fatal blow right away, it wouldn't kill him because he's a vampire. And once they realize that, it's just as simple as letting in the sunlight. So there are a few ways to defeat him. A combined effort of Killua and Kurapika, then leading into Chain Jail, could stop his attacks. And with Nen, there's numerous ways to detect the void, I'm assuming. There's still a decent chance Vanilla Ice is going to kill someone, and if he does, he's probably screwed because Gon's going to go berserk. Or at the very least, it forces Kurapika into using Emperor Time and using his full powers. Chances are someone might die here. Probably Leorio, honestly, without any easy counters or detection. But maybe they all make it. Plus, if Kurapika has copied some abilities to help out here, that could help. We already said he probably has Geb at the very least, and he could probably utilize the water to detect the void by just kind of throwing it around the room, I guess. Other stands like Sethan or Horus might be helpful here too. But now onto the main event, Dio. One major downside to Dio is that he can't get Joestar blood. However, he still has the world, and his power simply has no counter from this group. They would be able to find him, but killing him is another story. Even without him achieving his full power, it's nigh impossible. Although another downside for Dio is the fact that they're not strapped for time. They don't need to immediately attack him, so they could scout and prepare and have some sort of plan. Also, knowing he's a vampire, they could attack in the daytime. He still has a weakness to sunlight after all. During the nighttime, he's pretty much unstoppable with his abilities, and they need to be completely removed from the town because even if they're in the same city at night, they're pretty screwed. I'd assume they'd want to fight under the best circumstances possible, so just wait for the day if it's not already daytime. This fight is very circumstantial. For one, Kurapika could use some of his copied abilities, but it all depends on which ones he's picked up. Not to mention, Dio knows the abilities of his henchmen anyway, so even if he does have copied abilities, Dio would know what to expect with them. Most likely, Dio is going to win this fight. There's a lot more paths to victory for him than for the group, but it's not impossible. If it's a fight at night and they have no knowledge of Dio's powers, they're dead. Nothing will counter him. If it's during the day, it takes place in the mansion, and they could simply just destroy the mansion and flood Dio with light. He'd retreat, of course, but it forces him into a corner. Although, this still isn't a definite win unless they find some guaranteed way to put him into sunlight, just to weaken him at least. Leorio isn't going to be doing much here, and honestly, I don't think Gon could do a lot here either. Killua at least has speed on his side, but time stop makes that kind of useless. However, catching Dio amidst the cooldown would allow him to attack at least. But I think Kurapika is the trump card, although it's still very circumstantial. So since it's dependent on who he's copied, let's cover some abilities that might help here. Copying Cream from Vanilla Ice is a no-brainer given how potent that is, and I don't see why he wouldn't try to copy it. This would at least make him invulnerable to Dio, but for attacking that's not much of a help, especially since Dio would be aware of how this works. You might think Alessi's Stand Seton would be useless against Dio since he's over a century old, but this might actually be the best one to use here. It could deactivate the world. Jotaro temporarily lost his stand due to de-aging because he got it so recently, and same goes for Dio. They'd still be fighting a really powerful vampire, but this might deactivate the world. Maybe Terrence Darby's stand can be used to detect when Dio's about to stop time. Not to mention Kurapika's own abilities here. He'd obviously be using Emperor Time during this fight, and he could probably use his Judgment Chain to stop Dio completely, but again, this assumes he even gets a chance for it in the first place. And if there's some way he could steal the world from Dio, that's a win for them. The chances of this are so extremely low though, but worth mentioning at least. It would be tough to hit him with Steel Chain or Stealth Dolphin. Again, I cannot stress enough, I think it's all really circumstantial, but by no means is it impossible, and Kurapika would have to hard carry here, but at least it gives him a chance to victory. And then maybe Ho-Ho shows up, so really he's the final fight. But in short, I think they're going to have no trouble getting to Egypt, and they only really face big challenges in Dio's mansion. But even with that, it's not an impossible victory here. They still have a few ways they could win. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Was there anything major I missed? Anything you agree or disagree with? Whatever it is, start discussing down there. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. And once more, thanks again to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video.